Dr. Boris, CEO of the Water and Sewerage Authority, Ms. Paula Fortune, Director Legal Services of the Water and Sewerage Authority, Mr. Gosain, Head of the Water Resource Agency, Mr. Keith Meade, Senior Manager, Water Resources Authority, all members of the management team of the Water and Sewerage Authority, members of the Adapt the River Program Steering Committee, parents, teachers, participants, a hearty good morning. Good morning? All right. I am indeed grateful for the opportunity to share a few words with you, the finalists of the spoken word competition being hosted by the Water Resource Agency Adopt the River Implementation Unit. I would like to congratulate you, the young poets, who have made the final leg of the competition, and I look forward, time permitting, to hearing what you have to say about preserving our rivers. It is indeed fitting that the finals are being held on World Environment Day, especially since this year's theme, Beat Plastic Pollutions, speaks to one of the factors that directly impact our rivers' plastic pollution. As a matter of fact, so relevant it is that it is estimated that by 2050, the experts estimate, and they say that we have about 8 million metric tons of plastics ends up in our oceans every year. Let me repeat that. It is said that 8 million metric tons of plastics ends up in our oceans every year. And it is also anticipated. How many of you go fishing? Anybody? Some of us go fishing? Well, it is estimated that by 2050, there will be more plastics than fishes in the oceans. I mean, that's a mind-boggling piece of statistics when you think about it. And when we recognize that, as I said, going fishing and living until 2050 is something that a lot of you young people will definitely be around. Some of us, Mr. Boris, we are hoping that we'll be there by 2050, but we know that you, the young individuals, will definitely be there. So as I said in another forum, what is happening with regard to pollution and plastics in our society is mind-boggling. When you look at the growth in the number of plastics, in 1950, we had 1.5 million metric tons of plastics getting into our waste disposals. That figure has grown to over 300 metric tons of plastics that are now produced annually. Again, you understand the gravity of the situation. You know, when we throw plastic bottles on the ground or snack bags or candy wraps into the drains, we are polluting our rivers because that is where these pieces of plastics eventually end up. And in doing so, we are polluting our sources of water. The water that you drink, the water that comes in your tap, and those that you buy in those same plastic bottles, 60% of that water comes from our rivers. And so, for our own survival, because water is essential to life, we must adjust and change the way in which we treat with our rivers throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And again, in keeping with World Environment Day and the theme, we also must address how we deal with plastics. That change, however, requires that everyone to get involved, especially you, our future leaders. But you don't have to wait until you grow up to make that change. You can start making it now. When you see a friend throwing plastics on the ground, talk to him about it. And talk to him about the consequences of what it is that they are doing. Many persons don't recognize the relationship between littering and the flooding that occurs when it rains. But the reality is that plastics and other debris contribute to the clogging of drains and the waterways, and that is how a lot of the flooding that you see around the rainy period, that is really how it occurs. You can also start to make the change in your own homes. And this might be a little bit ticklish for some of the young people, but I am challenging you. You know, when you see, because a lot of the times, a lot of the grown-ups around us admittedly have gotten into a lot of bad habits. And that is why the focus, a lot of our focus and our focus of the ministry has been dealing with the young people in a lot of our education programs. And I am hoping that you, the younger generations, will really lead the way. And in this case, you have a lot of information, and you have more information than even your parents. So again, when you see some of the approaches or some of the things that your parents are doing with regard to plastics, with regard to how they're using their waste, with regard to dumping, of not properly dealing with their waste, you take the lead and also quietly and respectfully guide your parents through the process. Use a recycled bottle and fill at school. These were things I remember as a young person when I went to school with my water bottle. All right? I actually went to school with a water bottle and a juice bottle. Two. One was red and one was green. It wasn't easy at that time to just buy water. But again, understand that when you buy water, or you buy water in a bottle, what happens to that bottle afterwards? What happens to the straw that you use when you want to drink the water from the straw? That's a plastic straw. What do you normally do with that plastic straw when you're finished with it? What do? You throw it in the bin. Now that plastic straw, you actually use that plastic straw for how long? 2 minutes? 2 minutes to have a drink, not even a minute to drink whatever you are doing. So in less than 30 seconds, 60 seconds, your use of that plastic straw is now complete. Does anybody have an idea how long it takes to that plastic straw to get biodegradable or to be absorbed in our in the environment? Who knows? How much years? Give me an answer, somebody. 300 years. 600 years. The truth is, it takes 1,000 years. So here it is, we took a piece of plastic, simple as it is, as a straw, and we use it for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 60 seconds. And that plastic stays with us for almost 1,000 years. Now, where does that plastic end up? A lot of that plastic ends up in our waterways. It ends up polluting our environment. So as I said, use reusable bottle to fill at your school water coolers and encourage your friends to do the same. In that way, you will be dramatically decreasing the amount of plastics that you use. But there are times when you have to use plastic. When you have to use them, we are also encouraging you to recycle them. So again, don't just throw them in the garbage. We are now, and a lot of the times, hopefully reaching your school, there will be recycling receptacles for you to put your plastics in. take your plastics and put it there. If you are in schools that do not have the facility, then advocate for them. Say you heard the minister talking about these things, that I could put my plastics, my bins, I want them in my school. And we will try to do what we can, get in contact with Swim Call, and they will provide them for you. And so I encourage you to find out where these so as I said, we find out where these recycle bins are in your schools, are in your neighborhoods, and use them. These are some of the many things that you can do, and you could start a social media. You could even start your own social media campaign where you take pictures of your recycling efforts and hashtag the best plastics pollution or save our rivers on them. So you could use your social media methods to actually help in doing something positive. You can start competitions among your groups of classes in your schools. You can start a plastic cleanup drive in your neighborhood. This particular competition, organized by the WRA, is just the start. It was meant to raise your awareness around the importance of preserving our rivers and fresh water sources. But now that you have done the research and performed your piece, it doesn't end there. This was an attempt to give you information. But like a relay, if you run a race and you pass the baton to the second person and the person stops and doesn't continue running to pass the baton, then the race isn't completed. So as you get the necessary information, you have to be motivated to pass that information on. So once again, I'd like to congratulate you all for the success of this competition. I commend the WRA for its initiative in providing you the incentive to do the necessary research. And I commend you for taking up the challenge to participate and to gain that research. I, however, implore you to continue the work as it relates to the conservation work, continue the work about saving our environment. World Environment Day is not just a day. It's not just a day to go and do one specific thing. It is a day for you to embody what it's all about, recognize what is happening in the environment around you, and decide to make one small change. And if that change that you could make stems from no longer asking for a straw to drink, no longer asking for a plastic straw, then you have done something meaningful, and World Environment Day would have impacted you. So get involved. Get involved as young leaders, get involved as students, get involved as teachers, and let us try to make this World Environment Day a very useful endeavor in helping to change our lives and changing the culture of how we deal with the environment and how we deal, by extension, with our water courses and our rivers going forward. I thank you.